see if this mic works. Can you all hear me?
Yeah. Yep.
Excellent. I love when technology is actually working, and hopefully all of these toys will be working perfectly as well. I'm Amory Jane, also known as AJ. I'm the education coordinator at She-Bop. How many of you have been to She-Bop here in Portland? Okay, so most of you. She-Bop has 2 locations now, in case you were not aware of that. One in Southeast at 32nd and Division, and the other one in North Portland in the Mississippi District. And She-Bop has been around since 2009. I've been working there since 2010. I was their first employee that they hired, so I've learned a lot about sex toys over the years. Now, sex toys are not a new thing. Sex toys have been around for 28,000 years. And in fact, the first sex toy was found in a cave in what's now modern-day Germany. It was a stone phallus about 8 inches long and 1.5 inches wide. And it was also our first dual-use toy because in addition to being a pleasure object, it was used to start fires. I still wish they made those because that would be very handy for camping. So usually I can talk for like 2 hours on sex toys, but today we have less time, so I'm just going to give a brief overview. We're going to talk about some of the different shapes that are out there, some of the different features that are in modern day sex toys, and talk a little bit about the history of where they came from, because it is a long and fascinating history. People have been sticking things in their holes as long as they've had holes, which is what I tell people when they're like, when was the first sex toy invented? And I'm like, well, when masturbation was invented. Because people, as long as they are around, they'll find a way. They'll find a way. So fortunately now, we don't have to use things like hand-carved stone or wooden devices. The materials that we use nowadays are mostly going to be plastics, silicone, steel, glass, and elastomer. There are also some other materials out there, but those are iffy. Now, what's going to set She-Bop apart from other toy companies or other stores is that we have all body-safe products. So everything I've brought here today is body-safe and toxin-free. But if you're ever in another store or getting something on the internet, you can look and see that there are toxic toys out there. I brought one here. Usually you can tell kind of by looking that they look a little more chintzy generally, but I'm not going to open this because the smell of toxic toys usually smells like a headache, and I don't want to give people a headache. It's got kind of that new shower curtain plasticky smell. So if you're ever wondering if your toy is body safe, give it a sniff test, and if it smells strong like plastic, it's probably not. Toys that are plastic that have had softeners added to them so that they can be more squishy like skin contain something called phthalates, and phthalates can leach into the body. At very minimum, people don't notice them, or maybe they feel a little bit of an itch. At most, there have been people who have reported complete immune system shutdown. So it can be a pretty serious thing to have these toxins in the body, which is why it's important to have body-safe sex toys. And unfortunately, it's not a regulated industry. So the FDA doesn't tell companies what they are and aren't allowed to put into sex toys. You could duct tape some bees together inside of a cornucopia and then be like, it's a very new steampunk sex toy made with bees. And they'd be like, well, I don't know, it's a little fishy, but it's an unregulated industry, so we're gonna let it go. So, you know, that doesn't happen, but people do make them out of some weird things. So make sure that as a consumer, you're checking and seeing what your materials are made out of. The cheapest material that's still body safe is gonna be ABS plastic, which is a hard, non-porous plastic. This toy here, the We Vibe Tango, is made out of ABS plastic. It's small and mighty, and I'm gonna pass these around so you can really get your hands on them. If you wanna turn this on, you just hit the button on the bottom, and then you can click through the different modes. I will warn you that it is very strong, so it might kind of jump out of your hand, so hold it carefully. It's like a baby bird. Beyond plastic, silicone is going to be the next most popular material, and some people like silicone because it's going to be really squishy. So you've got smoothness to it, you've got a little bit more bend and give that you don't have with the plastic. So this is from the same company, it works in the same way, but you can compare the textures. Silicone's going to feel a little bit more bendable, so it's really popular for things like dildos that need to go in strap-ons or be handheld, or things that are trying to be more lifelike. Something like this is going to feel more realistic, whereas if you had a hard plastic, that's not going to feel very realistic. I'm gonna pass this around. This is a Vic Skin dildo. Vic Skin is dual density, so you've got a firm core in the center and then a softer, squishier outside. If it feels a little sticky, it's just because of the way that the silicone is used. In the store, if you ever come in and feel these, we have them dusted with cornstarch, which keeps them nice and powdery, silky feeling instead of kind of that sticky feeling. But when you're using it at home, like if you're using it in a strap-on, you can put lube on it and that kind of stickiness goes away. That's just part of the dual density action. Now, other materials that you might see, wood, even though I kind of made fun of that we don't have wooden toys anymore, we absolutely do. But fortunately, these are not like grandpa's hand-carved on the porch novelties. These are a company called Knob Essence, and they're sustainable, so they grow back all of their wood. It's a really cool company, actually. I didn't bring any of those, but I did bring the most popular kind of alternative material, which is stainless steel. So surgical stainless steel is quite heavy. This could be used as a bludgeoning tool. I keep mine in my bedside drawer so that if there's an intruder in the home, I can just, reach this and hit them over the head with it. But these are heavy, which means that you can really feel them. So when you're using it, it's very obvious that it's there. Some people also like steel because you can heat it up and cool it down. So right now it's probably pretty cool to the touch because it was traveling in the car outside. But by the time it gets to the last person, it'll be warmed up from everybody's body temperature. And that's a really nice thing about steel is that it holds onto temperature well. So you can use it a little bit heated up or cooled down. But don't put it in the freezer, okay, before using it. Cold metal, like frozen metal, is not good, especially with your wet body parts. You also don't want to heat up the toys too much so that they burn. So those are your main materials. Now, in terms of shapes, there's going to be millions of kinds of sex toys out there. And it's a little bit of something for everyone. So some people might want something that's more lifelike, like the dildo we passed around. And other people might want something a little more abstract. Some people might be looking for toys that have maybe a certain kind of shape to fit their body better. I'll show you some of the different shape examples. We'll start with these two little ones that are more for outside of the body. So this one is the Chani Rabbit from Kama Sutra brand. It's got these flexible little ears, and there's a motor in each of these ears. So to turn it on, we just hit this button in, and this one's got this cool glowing. It's really pretty. I'm gonna take it to a disco. All the colors change on the side of it, which is really neat, and then you can click up through the different modes. This can surround the clitoris, or this can go around the nipples. It can also be moved apart to be wider and go around the head of the penis. So it's kind of a versatile toy for a lot of different folks. And we can pass this around if it's vibrating too much, you can click through and have it go down in the intensity level. Another one that's more focused on outside of the body, this one's the Leia Spot, the original battery-operated version. So a lot of these I'm passing around are rechargeable. But battery-operated ones, some people like because they're really simple for travel. So for this, you just hold down the, I put in these batteries upside down, I think. So for this, you just hold the button down, and you can have this kind of rest on the body. So this is going to be curved to fit just to lay on top of the vulva, which is why it's called the Leia Spot, because it can just kind of lay there and rest against the body. It's an ergonomic design. This one's not turning on, so I won't pass this around, but pretty cool shape. A lot of these are engineered by people who are world famous product designers, people who have won design awards, people who sometimes have come from the field of architecture. So a lot of thought and care goes into these designs, and usually a lot of market research as well. You can tell the ones that haven't had market research because people are like, I don't understand how that would ever fit on my body. So it's important in this kind of a field to have market research and get actual feedback from people. This one here can be used internally or externally. It's called the GG, which is by a Swedish company, Lelo. Rechargeable toy that you just hit the plus button to turn on. You can go up in intensity with the arrows. You can click through the different modes, so a lot of different settings here. Now GG, can you guess what GG is designed for? The G-spot, yeah. So this goes about 1.5 inches to 2 inches into the vagina, and then toward the navel is the way that you would want to press this. The head that's flat and curved up is going to have an easier access to the G-spot that way. And now, some of you may have heard the G-spot is a myth, but people with vaginas generally will have G-spots, but not everybody is responsive to their G-spot in the same way. Some people, when their G-spot is touched, they're like, whee, this is the best ever. And other people are like, that makes me feel like I have to pee. And other people are like, I got nothing. I'm not feeling anything here. So everybody responds differently, and that's totally normal. And that's kind of what I tell people the most at She-Bop, or when people ask me about sex toys, is that you're totally normal. There's no one toy that works for every single person. There's no one thing that's going to make everybody orgasm or even in the same way. So with toys, that's why it's really important, I think, to get a feel of them and actually check them out in person, because it can be really hard to know otherwise how it would fit your body or what it would feel like. Other ones that we have up here, this one's called the Amarino, so it's supposed to look like a Cupid's bow and arrow. This little band can go on it, and this can be inserted vaginally for a more shallow penetration, so it just goes in a little bit with this outside, and then the band is going to vibrate into the labia, which is an area that's generally ignored by most sex toys. So it's got that really unique design. You can also twist this band around, and then this can be a lay-on toy as well. It's from Fun Factory, the same company that makes that. So this can rest against the vulva and vibrate on the outside. Or you can ditch the band altogether, and now you have a little bit of a dual toy where this can go inside and this can be outside up against the clitoris. To turn this one on, you just hit the fun button, and then the plus and minus are your intensity levels. Now this one is a dual vibe that only has one motor. So there's one motor in here that transfers vibration into both of these parts, but there are sometimes toys that have two separate motors that you can work individually for each component. A couple of other unique toys that I have up here. This one is the Stronic Eins. Do any of you speak German? So Stronic Eins means the strong one, and this is a thrusting toy. So their slogan is trust the thrust with this one. So you can see it moving now. Can you tell it's moving across there? The display stand for this in the shop, it's a swing, so it actually swings back and forth. But you can see it move, so it does its own thrusting. Perfect for if you're lazy, you just lay back and let this thing do all of the work. It's got 10 different settings total, and what a lot of people really like about this is that it provides a consistent pressure. So let's say you are experimenting with G-spot stimulation, and your partner is getting you really close, but their hands start getting tired, arthritic or sore, and they're just like, this is difficult. Well, the nice thing about a machine is that it doesn't get sore, and it doesn't complain, and it's very consistent in the way that it moves. So a lot of people like vibrators for that because humans can be kind of inconsistent with the amount of pleasure or pressure that they provide, whereas a machine is built to be consistent on purpose. Now, some people get afraid of being replaced by sex toys, to which I say, you must have a really terrible personality if you're afraid of being replaced by a sex toy. Because yes, while sex toys can bring a lot of great fun and pleasure, you know, they're not gonna listen to me when I'm sad or had a bad day, and they're really not so good at snuggling. So, to the people who are concerned about sex toys replacing humans, I don't think we're there yet. Maybe once they become AI sex robots, then we might have a problem. Now, I've been talking about vibrators a lot, but there are other toys out there. And a really important thing to know is if you're gonna stick anything in your butt, it needs to have a base. Now, my mama told me this when I was a child. That's not true. But this is wisdom that I would want to pass on to anyone, because if you go to OHSU up the road, they have a box of sex toys they pulled out of people's orifices because they were not using butt-safe toys. For a toy to be butt-safe, it needs to have a flanged base, something to keep it outside of the body, like these here, or it needs to have some sort of retrieval loop, or a very significant curve, like for instance, that steel toy. Now, if you're thinking, oh, I don't know, I could probably put this in there because this is kind of a loop. This is not a very sturdy thing to hold on to. And if you've ever stuck something in a butt, I'm going to assume at least half of you have, you know those muscles are very strong. So anytime you put something in there, it's like, oh, hi, and it'll suck it up, which is why you need something to keep it outside the body. So if you don't hear anything else I say tonight, hear this. You want to make sure toys that go in your butt have a flared base, a flanged base, or a retrieval loop. Okay. Now this adorable one that looks like a Valentine's, it says, fuck me on the bottom. I hope this isn't a censored YouTube channel. Oops. So with this, it is a butt plug, which just is exactly what it sounds like. It's intended to go in anally and just plug your butt. Most of these are tapered at the top for easier insertion, and then it goes whoop, and then the neck just sits there in the anal canal and it hangs out. Some people wear these around, walking around throughout the day, maybe pop it at the end of their work shift to get ready for a date later that night. Other people like wearing it in during sex. I think they make just nice little mantle knickknacks also. So many uses for the butt plug. Most of them are going to be silicone. For any anal toy, you definitely want a non-porous material. It's just going to make it easier to clean up and take care of. They also do make anal toys that vibrate now. So vibration isn't just for vaginas and clitorises. You can also have anal vibrating toys. This specific one is from B-Vibe, which has a remote control with it. So I can pass this actual toy around and control it with the remote. So that should go up in intensity there. Does it feel more powerful now? Or you can go down in intensity, or you can change through the modes. And this is fun because you can use this with a partner and they can control the remote separate, or you can have the remote and controlling it separate, which is really convenient when it's stuck in your butt instead of like reaching back there and trying to mess with the controls. So good job, B-Vibe, with that remote. They're also making a lot of other toys now that are app compatible, so you can download an app to your smartphone and use that as a remote for the toy, which is super fun. So you can go out into a restaurant with your partner and be using a vibrator across from the table, and people will be like, wow, that person's rude just sitting there texting while their partner's eating dinner. But really what you're doing is you're getting your partner off under the table, and that's not rude at all. Those people should mind their own business. So sex toys are really opening up a whole new world with technology, the way that they're working through Bluetooth now, and some of them are even music compatible, so they'll vibrate to the beat of your favorite song, which is really neat. They've come a long way since the 70s, which is when we had things like the Hitachi Magic Wand. But I am not knocking this because this toy is still one of our best sellers. It's a classic, and for some people it's the only thing that works. Now, is there an outlet back here? I just want us to hear these nice modern toys we've been passing around and how you've barely heard them compared to, you know, one of these very powerful ones. How many of you have ever felt one of these before? A Hitachi Magic Wand. Okay, just a couple people. I highly encourage, once we plug this in, to come up and feel the power, because it's very powerful. So we'll come back to that in a second while the cords are being unraveled. In the meantime, let's talk about one that's kind of the opposite of doing that intense power. This one, terrible name, it's called the Womanizer. Now, it's a German company. We're hoping something was lost in translation. The first time I saw this toy, I was like, that is tacky. It has like it's bejeweled leopard print. So it looks like, yeah, like a razor or an ear thermometer. So I was thinking, I don't even know what this thing is, and it costs like $150. Yeah, right, whatever. So I was not super stoked just by looking at it, and then I used it. Was like, never mind. I'm sorry I hurt your feelings. This is a very unique toy because the clitoris goes in here, and basically you can click through with this big jewel button, and it has kind of a suction airflow design. It's really innovative, really unique. And if you put your pinky in here as we're passing it around, you'll feel it. it feels almost like, well, it kind of purrs, first of all, and it feels like an airflow suction. So if you can imagine someone gently sucking on a clitoris, that's what it feels like. And as you can imagine, that feels pretty nice. So we can go ahead and pass that around. And if you put it up against your hand, you're like, oh, I don't really feel much there. You really have to picture what it would be like to have a very, very sensitive part of the body kind of gently suctioned into there. And, you know, there are vibrators out there for everybody. There are vibrators that are really high-powered. There are vibrators that are gentle. There are vibrators for clitorises, for penises, for labia. And I really encourage people to experiment with vibrators and see what works for them. Now, who wants to feel this Hitachi? So, this is just called the Magic Wand Original now, actually, because Hitachi, I don't know if you've ever seen, but they make tons of stuff. They have, like, tractors and computers, and, like, it's a very big company, but everyone just knows it for this famous sex toy. And they were getting tired of only being known for that, so they had their name dropped off of it. Which is sad because, like, this is their moneymaker. Let's put them on the map. So this was invented in 1970 in Japan, and it has not changed since then. It's got 2 speeds, high and higher. So this is low, and that is high. Since this is not something we can pass around, if you'd like to come up and feel this, I will have this up here for you. It is quite intense.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. It works really well for if you have like a sore back too, because it's, oh yeah, it just gets right into those muscles. So the box for this too, it's just like a person who's like in a towel using it on their neck and shoulders. And a lot of people, when they see this, are like, whoa, my grandma had one of those. She used it on her back. And I was like, sure she did. Good job, Grandma. If anybody wants to feel this afterward, it'll be up here too. Very powerful and very iconic. You can find people making art dedicated to this online, like on Etsy. It's kind of a symbol for a lot of people of closing the orgasm gap. The orgasm gap being that usually cis men are the ones who are getting off during sex and having orgasms. And so cis men are people who are assigned male at birth and who consider themselves male at birth, or male. So those are the people who are usually orgasming, and a lot of the rest of us are getting left in the dust. But with vibrators, we can close that orgasm gap, and more people can reach orgasm during sex. So this is a very famous feminist toy as well. Now, a couple other things that I brought in, and then we're just gonna maybe do Q&A since I have a lot of information I've given you. This one here is another remote-controlled vibrator. Now, what do you think this is for? Butt could work. What else? Bluetooth? Mm-hmm. Yep. So vagina with some clit action, or I heard someone say wrap around the penis. It can do all of those things. This is one that's got a really unique bendable shape that you can kind of figure out what you want to do with it. And the cool part is that it has a remote so that you can have somebody else control the vibration. Now, the remote on this uses sense motion technology, which is basically where if I have it flat, it vibrates really lightly. But the more vertical it goes, the more power. So do you feel it getting more powerful? You can also put it on another mode where you can shake it or move it, so that way it can vibrate to whatever I'm doing with my hand. This can be a really fun couples toy too, because this part's vibrating, so I know exactly what kind of stimulation I'm providing. And since this vibrates, this could be used as a clit vibrator, and the faster I go and am moving this on my body, my partner would feel the exact same vibrations I feel. So it's very bonding. It's really nice. I'll just leave it on a standard setting right now so that you all can feel that vibrate. I'll just set that there. And then finally, not all toys are going to be about orgasm. Sometimes they're about health. And this here is a kegel ball. So kegel balls were originally called Benoit balls. They usually came as a set. The original ones contained mercury, so not super great for you. But once they figured out that you're not supposed to put mercury in your body, then they started making them out of other materials. Originally, they were inserted in the vagina during intercourse so that a male partner could feel stimulation during sex. But the people with the vaginas were noticing, oh hey, this actually feels really good, and I'm noticing that it's strengthening my pelvic floor. So Benoit balls and Kegel balls have been used to help strengthen the pelvic floor and help people get in touch with their pelvic floor to make it easier to reach orgasm. So the way this works is it's inserted into the vagina like a tampon, and then the string hangs outside the body. And there's an internal little weight that rolls around in there. So you might feel as you walk that this weight moves around, which triggers your muscles to squeeze around it. And the relaxing is just as important as the squeezing. So when you're doing your Kegels, this part of it is just as important as this part of it. You need to learn how to both relax and strengthen. And this is not about tightness. What it's about is being able to have more control, which can help with things like incontinence later in life. Some people, as they age, they might notice that when they laugh or they sneeze, they leak a little bit, but having a strong pelvic floor can prevent that. These are also the muscles that are going to contract involuntarily during orgasm. So the more pronounced those are and the more aware of those are, the more you feel them during orgasm. So Kegel exercises can be good for a lot of things. They're also really good before and after childbirth too, and some people use them after surgery for rehabilitation. At She-Bop, in addition to having a bunch of really fun vibrators and dildos, we also have implements for kink, like hitting people with a paddle or floggers. So this is a flogger handle. These are called the falls. This is a leather flogger. So you can use this to give people a good smack. We can pass this around so you can feel this. There's also a paddle which has a naughty and nice side. The nice side is all fuzzy and soft, and then the naughty side is leather. So you can feel this too. We also have a lot of locally made products, things like massage oil, massage candles, and of course, we have lubricant. So lubricant, there are three main types. You're gonna have a water-based lube, oil-based lube, and silicone. Now, water-based lube is the most common type of lubricant. The number one ingredient is water, as you can imagine. With water-based lubes, they're not all created equal. So you want to look at the ingredient list, and if you're prone at all to yeast infections, avoid any water-based lubes that have glycerin in them. Glycerin is usually added to lubes to make them a little bit sweeter, but it acts like a sugar in the body, and sugar plus vagina usually equals yeast infection. So make sure that you get glycerin-free lube if you're prone. And some people also will avoid parabens. Parabens are a preservative that are put in a lot of products. Toiletries, cosmetics, lubricants, but it is a preservative that a lot of people have irritation, and also it's been inconclusively linked to breast cancer, so some people are staying away from those as well. All of our water-based lubes at She-Bop are going to be paraben-free and glycerin-free though. Sliquid is a really common brand with a lot of different varieties, so that's a great water-based option. I also brought you some free samples of Good Clean Love, which is a local lube company. They're made in Eugene. So there's some water-based lube in here too for you all to take home. So water-based is going to be compatible with anything. Condoms, gloves, dental dams, sex toys, you name it, it's fine. Water-based lube is also the least messy. Sounds great, right? But the one drawback is that because it's made of water, it's going to eventually evaporate. So in that case, you just want to add a little bit of water to your play, a little spritzer bottle, or some people just use some spit and that'll reactivate the lube. Now, if you want a lube you don't have to reapply as often, something that's going to be a little longer lasting and slipperier, you have the options of oil and silicone. Silicone is super long lasting. It kind of feels like a dry oil. Really, really slippery. So slippery, in fact, that it has multiple uses. It's used a lot by marathon runners. They put it in between their thighs so that their thighs don't rub together and get chafed while they're running long distances. Also, it's something that a lot of people who are cyclists will take in their backpacks with them because you can use it to oil up chains. I use it on my squeaky door at home. So it's got a lot of a lot of purposes. It is created in a laboratory, and it's created to lay on top of the skin and not soak in, which is why it's not going to evaporate in there. It's just going to be nice and slippery on the surface. Now, you're welcome to try this. 1 drop goes a long way. And silicone lube is something that can stain sheets and clothing, so be aware of that. It also is not compatible with your silicone toys, so if you have a lot of silicone toys, you would want to be using water-based lube or oil-based lube. But silicone lube is really great for things where you don't want to apply it a lot or there's a lot of friction. Things like hand jobs are really, really great with silicone lube because with a water-based lube, it's just going to gel up and evaporate very quickly with all the friction. So a lot of people like silicone for that. Silicone is also, it's condom compatible, compatible with dams, things like that too. Now, the one lube that is not compatible with latex, like condoms and dams and gloves, is oil-based. And this particular oil-based is a really unique one. This is my favorite oil-based lube, which is from Luminous Botanicals. It is actually a THC lube. So this is cannabis oil. So I'm going to pass this around, and you're welcome to try it. It's not going to get you contact high on your skin. If you were to put it in your mouth, definitely it would, though. I'll look the other way if you want to do that. But very high THC. A cannabis lubricant, something that people might want to use that for is if they experience pain during intercourse or they have a hard time relaxing. It can really get the blood flowing, so it can also help with arousal. And a lot of people like cannabis to use with sex because it can help them with their body image and kind of get out of their brain and feel their body. So it's really good for a lot of reasons. In terms of the way it feels, it's very slippery. It's more viscous, thicker than the silicone lube, but it's really nice and nourishing on the skin. Very moisturizing, super popular for people who are menopausal, postmenopausal, or take medication that dries them out because it really helps with elasticity and improving moisture. So there's kind of benefits to each type of lube. I brought some silicone samples for you too. Not allowed to give out cannabis oil samples, unfortunately, because of the OLCC, but you can get that at most dispensaries. Okay, one more thing I wanted to point out as well is that if you're like, yeah, I love all of these sex toys, but I would like something a little more custom. Maybe you have a partner with a penis who travels a lot and you just wish you had a replica. And that's what this is. Clone a Willy. This is a local company, Empire Labs, that make these, so you can make a penis at home, your favorite penis, as a kit here. So this one is the glow-in-the-dark blue, which is lovely. I have a show coming up on Sunday, Whoopee, a sex-positive variety show, and we're giving these out to all of the VIPs. We're also going to be raffling some off. So if you want to win one, it'll be there. Otherwise, I can also pass this around and you can kind of look at the steps on the back, which are really fun. So there are ways that you can make custom toys. They're also now releasing prints for 3D printing so that you can make custom vibrators and custom dildos as well. And I think in the future, that's definitely where we're going to be going. What that's going to do to sex toy boutiques like She-Bop, I'm not sure. Maybe we'll eventually have 3D printers set up there and we'll all have to know how to 3D print for people. It'll be really fascinating to see where the future of sex toys go. But for now, these are pretty much our most up-to-date toys, and I think I brought a pretty nice selection. Do you all have any questions about any of the things I passed around, or maybe just questions about sex toys in general? Yeah.
Yeah, you had the one that had like the bendable curved part that you would kind of like, and you were talking about like different shapes and shapes to fit certain sizes. Like, are there any that have like that are bendable but like for insertion that like that you can change the shape of it and it'll kind of stay that way? Is there something on the market like that?
Kind of. I mean, there are ones that are going to be able to be really flexible, but in terms of like changing the size of it with the vibrators, that's not really possible because you have to be able to have the motor in there. So there are ones that like, there's one called the Nova by WeVibe, which has an internal part that stays the same, but then the external part is kind of like this I don't want to call it a hook because a hook sounds scary. But it's like a gentle silicone arm that bends in, and you can either take it on top of the clitoris or you can have it in front, and then people can bend it to where it works for their body. So something like they're trying to do more where it's the same toy for everyone, but you can use it in different ways, and it's flexible enough that different bodies are going to be able to use it. So that's kind of where they're going with that. Yeah. Being able to make an exact custom toy is really challenging. I actually worked with some people who are developing a vibrator that's supposed to be interactive for strap-on sex. So basically you have one side that goes inside the vagina, and then the other side is connected to the partner, and you're supposed to feel each other's stimulation based on these little sensors. But just the research of trying to figure out where to put the sensors is very complicated because everybody's got different zones inside of them that are more sensitive than others. So it's another reason why sex toys aren't going to work for every single person in the same way, and that there is a little bit of experimentation. And it's definitely encouraged if you can get into a shop and feel them on your hands first instead of just ordering online where you just kind of have to guess what it's like. Yeah. Other questions? Yes?
The Uber lube that was silicone?
Yes.
A lot of water-based lubricants tend to get tacky, and
Yeah.
I noticed this just simply dries, which is really nice. Is silicone considered inert as far as using it within your body? I mean,
Yeah, silicone, as long as it's not in massive quantities. Like for instance, if someone had a silicone breast implant, like a large breast implant, and it exploded in the body, that would be very uncomfortable for it to leak out. But for the amount of lube that people use, there are no issues. It's inert. Very, very few people have any sort of allergy to it. It's really simple ingredients. It's like 3 or 4 ingredients, and that's it in all silicone lubes. So it's a really nice option for a lot of people. And yeah, it does just stay on top of the skin, which is great. But at the same time, like if you have too much on and you're rolling around in your sheets, you can stain your sheets. So always be aware of that. If you're using a lot of silicone lube, you might want to throw down an old sheet or a towel first, or have some baby wipes afterwards to wipe up. Good question. Other questions? Yeah.
Well, you mentioned sex robots earlier, and I think that's kind of a trippy concept. What do you think about that? Because I feel like it's gonna happen. We're all gonna see it happen someday, and it's gonna be really weird, and who knows which way it goes. Do you have any thoughts on that?
Well, I mean, it's already happening. They already have sex robots here. They're very expensive. They're a little less expensive in Japan, and quite a few people have them. I mean, the way that people are attached to their technology, it's pretty inevitable, I think, that's the way we're going to head. And I see some real benefits to it. I mean, I think it could be a great way for people to explore their sexuality before exploring it with other people. Or maybe if there was something that they wanted to do that other people didn't want to do, then they could have that connection with their sex doll. Right now, the eyes, I can't get past the eyes personally. They're still real creepy. But once they figure out how to make robot eyes less creepy, I think that they're going to be popular. My one concern would just be that humans won't know how to talk to other humans anymore, though, and rely too much on technology. But that's true of a lot of things. People aren't going to know how to make toast in the future because their toaster is going to do it for them. So, it's just kind of a bigger issue all around. But I think there are some benefits to that. There are just hand job robots too in Japan, which are just basically disembodied arms, and you can adjust the grip and then press play on how fast you want it to go. And I like how customized that is. And I could see those having really great uses too for people who have lost limbs. So I think robotics are important to have to help people have their sex life come back to them as well. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
Do you think that that being in our country, I'm sure you toured around different places with products, but touring around in our country, do you think that we still have a stigma about sex shops and sexual toys, and as opposed to maybe other countries who may not have that kind of stigma?
Yeah, I mean, it really varies from region to region too. I think here in Portland, I can come to a place like this and have a sex toy talk, and everyone's like, cool, yay, and they'll ask questions. But I've traveled into the deep south where that probably would not be a thing that was widely advertised. So I think that there is still stigma. In the state of Alabama, sex toys are still illegal without a prescription from a doctor. You can only get them as educational aids or as health tools. So, you know, there's still a lot of stigma here. I think other countries, it depends, like places like Sweden, where Layla, that company, is from, they're very open about sex toys. Same in Germany, they're very open about sex toys. In Japan, they have a really interesting relationship because they have tons of sex toys, and that's where a lot of the technology starts. But they also have interesting obscenity laws where anything that looks too much like a penis has to have a face on it, so it's more cartoon-like. So every culture is using sex toys, but there's a different level of acceptance, and the obscenity laws, people kind of have to play around with it. So it's pretty special going to different places. And then there are some places in the world where they're completely banned and where people aren't allowed to have them, and if you're traveling with them, then you can get them confiscated. So I think that maybe we're on the more progressive end in terms of worldwide how we view sex toys, but even that, it's going to be dependent on where you live within the country. If you live in Portland, you're probably going to be able to talk about sex toys around the water cooler, but if you're in Alabama, you might get fired for it. Yeah. Other questions? Yeah.
Touched on like the history of sex toys.
Mhm.
It's been going back a long time, 20,000 years. So,
28, yeah.
Are there any other like areas or cultures where sex toys are more abundant?
Well, so the cock ring was actually really prominent in China, especially among royalty. So the emperors would actually walk around their palaces without pants on and wear their cock rings, which were custom made for them. They were hand carved out of ivory and jade, and they were seen as status symbols. So they were like lions and dragons and really like customized, beautiful hand-carved things, and people would, you know, bow down and look and admire the artwork. And I'm just trying to think of like how that would work in our modern politics. You know, like our senators walking around with cock rings on while they're filibustering or whatnot. I don't know. It's getting weird out there. I don't put that past us. But yeah, so that's part of it. Like that was a big part of the status symbol. It was kind of seen as somebody having a lot of vigor and wealth if they were able to have a cock ring, a custom-made cock ring. There are some cultures where, you know, they're going to be focused more on pleasure for a woman. So a lot of the toys are going to be designed like ancient Greece, for instance. They had these things called oblisbos, which were basically dildos that were hand carved, and they were given to women as almost a consolation prize. Like when their spouses would go off to war or die, they were like, we're so sorry for your loss, here is a dildo. But you know, it was kind of seen as something that could help the widow through her grief. So yeah, I mean, different cultures have different histories with their sex toys. And in terms of US history, the vibrator is a really fascinating history. It was invented by an American physician because it was used to cure hysteria, which was this ailment that was basically, how can I put this? It's basically, you know the phrase, bitches be crazy? It's that, but medicalized. And so people would go and they'd get these massages given by their doctor's hands, which were just pelvic massages until they'd reach orgasm. But as you can imagine, the doctor's like, oh, my wrist, I've already seen 5 patients today. And so this physician, George Taylor, decided to invent a machine that could do this for him so that he could save time and it would be more effective. And it was so popular that other physicians started getting these vibrators. The first one was steam powered, like a locomotive. But then eventually they got battery operated, so they were smaller. They used to sell them from door to door, like Sears catalog style, Tupperware style. They'd go door to door and sell them. They were seen as health tools to to cure hysteria and other ailments, and they were advertised in magazines all the time. But then when stag films got introduced, so early porn, people were using these toys in early porn, and then the government's like, hey there, wait a minute now, that is not a health tool, that is a perversion tool. And then vibrator advertisements were banned, and they kind of had to go a little more underground. So I think it changes based on where people are at. Like during the 80s, there wasn't tons of advancement in sex toys because it was a pretty conservative time. But then in the 90s and the early 2000s, with a lot of tech and a more progressive government, then we started seeing tons and tons of more types of sex toys come out. So it's, in a lot of ways, it's political as well as cultural. Yeah. Was there another question in the back? Uh-huh.
Yeah, you said you have the show on Saturday.
It's on Sunday, uh-huh.
Sunday, yeah. What other things do you do on these sex education for She-Bop and Whoopi? And I believe you have a podcast as well.
Yeah.
Yeah, do you want to talk a little more?
Sure. Yeah, my podcast is called Sex on the Brain with Amory Jane, and you can find it on my website, amoryjane.com, or on iTunes and Stitcher. Whoopi is coming up on Sunday at the Bossa Nova Ballroom, and it's a sex-positive variety show. This month's theme is sex magic, so it's going to be like a little bit spooky, mostly sexy, and it's a variety of things, sex-positive comedy, storytelling, aerial arts, fire dancing, burlesque, all sorts of stuff. It's really fun. I have flyers up here for people, and we give away tons of free sex toys, and everybody gets free gifts. So that's just like my way of giving sex positivity to the community and kind of combining sex ed and entertainment, which makes it more palatable for some people if they're a little bit shy. And then at She-Bop, we have usually 3 or 4 classes a month. We offer a lot of different topics. We have the Joys of Toys, which is kind of this, but more expanded upon, coming up in December. We offer that every year before Christmas to help people get educated before they buy gifts. I have a sex and cannabis class coming up at the end of November. We have strap-on classes, anal sex classes, burlesque dance classes, all sorts of different topics. And you can find out more about that on She-Bop's website if you go to sheboptheshop.com/events. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Is there a piece of sex know-how you wish more people knew?
Consent. I wish that everybody was trained in consent. I wish that consent was taught from a very early age at home and in the classroom. I think consent is the cornerstone of sexuality and should be the beginning of every communication around sex. So that's definitely something I wish people had more practice in. Besides that, like just really simply, don't be afraid to use lube. When I was growing up, I grew up in Indiana, and there was like lube shame. People are like, if you need lube, then someone's not doing it right. But like some people just have more dryness. Some people have a diet or medication that has them dry, or they just don't get super juicy on their own. There's no shame in lube. In fact, it can make people feel a lot more comfortable. It can have people last longer. It can help things feel more soothing and more pleasurable, and it can also decrease the risk of STI and STDs because the drier you are, the more chances for like micro cuts and things like that. So in terms of like simple advice, always use lube, and beyond that, definitely get educated around consent. If you have children, talk to them early about consent and talk to your friends about it, because that's the only way that we're gonna fight rape culture and have pleasure positivity be something that's accessible to everyone, is through consent. Yeah. Oh, thank you.
Also, is there like this is a weird one to like say, like I think some people don't really understand what consent means. Is there literature out there expressing yourself, also like asking, and like are there resources that you know of like for people?
Yeah. We have some books at She-Bop, including a simple little zine that's about consent that are really good options. We also go into colleges and train on consent. So myself and my colleague Gretchen, we go into a lot of like PSU, PCC classrooms, and we talk to their students about consent, which I think is really important. And I think more schools are doing that, especially during that first term. So a lot of people, those are held to the public so people can come in and get their info on consent there. There's also a lot of good online resources. Planned Parenthood has some good online resources, and for younger people, Scarletine is a really great website that has sex ed in general and talks about consent too. Yeah. Any other questions? Well, I'll be sticking around for a while if anybody wants to come up and ask me anything and you don't want to ask it out loud. I also have some free lube samples up here for you. These are water-based lube. This is got a very mild vanilla scent, but it's a nice organic lube for people who maybe find that their pH balance gets off. Maybe you have BV or yeast infections frequently. This is a really nice option because it's made to help biomatch the vagina to be at the right pH. And then the silicone lube here, silicone lube here, y'all can take as many of these as you want. Just make sure you don't use these with your silicone toys. So thank you so much for having me. That was really fun.
Tuesday, October 24th with Jonathan Sunday as a character designer and illustrator with his talk Bringing Characters to Life. He'll discuss how to create a character from scratch, the fundamentals of appealing design, and why stories should guide your design choices. More information, check out our website at curiosityclub.handisupply.com, and let's give another round of applause for